Okay, I think we might be live. I'm new to this, so I'm not 100% sure. So, okay, thank you. It just said something about live. Thanks, I can see your message there. Are we live? Hi, I've just got the signal from Drawn and Quarterly that I can start talking. So I think we're live now. So my name is Emily Carrington, and I'm very pleased to be announcing that this is the launch of my first book. It's called Our Little Secret, and it's published through Drawn and Quarterly, and it's available to order now. So this book is a story about, it's a memoir, a story about sexual abuse I experienced when I was 15 years old in the Maritime provinces in Canada when I was growing up with at the hands of my much older 40-year-old neighbor. It talks about the events and a bit about my life leading up to it, the abuse itself, and it talks about the aftermath, as well as my attempts to get justice through the legal system. I tried to make this book more about like a documentation of what happened, and without being too explicit. It's not I hope too explicit. That definitely wasn't what my aim in this book was. So now I've not done a book launch before, so I'm not good at remembering talks and speeches, so I'm going to rely pretty heavily on my notes here. And first, let you know that my plans for the launch, what I was hoping to go over was talk about a little bit about my background. So I'm in my mid-50s, and this is my first book. So, you know, when did I first start getting interested in comics and so on? And I'll talk about, most of the talk I think will be about the creative process involved in bringing the comic from an idea to a finished product, because I think just sitting here and talking just about sexual abuse is just a little bit too grim for a long talk like this for everybody, including myself. So if I go too long, they can just stop me and get to the questions, but I think it should be about a half an hour or so that I'm talking. So first of all, I'd like to explain a little bit about the space I'm in. It's not my studio. My studio is just a desk in the middle of my living room. So my studio is just a white desk in a white living room, and I like to work in my living room because it gives me lots of space to put stuff out on the floor and be able to see what I'm working on and to line the story up in a row so I can work on it. And I like to have, when I'm doing finished inks and so on, I like to put the TV on or CBC Talk Radio and have something on in the background. So this space that I'm in, I refer affectionately to as the shack. So it's not a room, it's a little tiny building. And I got a picture here of when I first built it. So you can see it's quite small, and it does have windows in it, just not on that side. So this little space, the reason I thought it might be more interesting to have the launch from this space is not because I didn't draw the book in here, but most of the events that happened in the book, the major events in the more recent part of the book, I spent a bit of quite a lot of time out in the shack. Dad was still alive at that point, and he lived in the house, which is just a short distance from the shack. And so, as you'll see in my book, he was a British guy, prone to stomping around and ranting and raving. And even up to his very last years, his mind was perfectly clear. So I would just come out here to get away from his racket that he was always making. So a lot of the time I was out here, and because of that, the shack is depicted a lot in the book. You'll see scenes from it in the book. So I just thought this was a better spot. So I'll just take my laptop and give you a 30-second tour of the shack. So the couch, you'll see quite a lot in the book. And then around here, we've got a sink and a couple of cupboards, the obligatory West Coast rubber boots over there in the corner, and some shelves. Then a little loft for napping, and that's about it. So back to my history. I didn't, I was in my 50s when I did this book. But I was interested in comics when I was a kid. But the gap between me doing this book and making any other attempt at all to write a book was like over 35 years. So a ridiculously long time. I think my last attempt to write anything approaching a book was in grade 6 or grade 8, probably like 1981 or 1980. So I'll just show you that, because there's a few pages that somehow didn't get lost in all the moves I made over life. Somehow I still have a few of these. So I thought I'd say, as a kid, I didn't really have a lot of imagination. So see if you can figure out which comic and which children's book these are blatantly copied from. So here we've got a person in a Egyptian kind of attire, and we've got they're on adventures and they're riding a giant dog. So that seemed familiar at all? Well, since I didn't have much imagination, I just basically I blended two stories together I liked, which one was this one here, I think it's called Papyrus, which ran for quite a long time. And the other one is not a comic book, but it's by Lloyd Alexander. And I really loved that series. And the hero's riding some kind of a giant cat at some point. So there we go. That was the limit of my imagination back then. So getting back in comics, like 35 or so years later, it was around 2017, I started to become interested in comics again. And before that time, I didn't even know there was such a thing as a graphic novel. I knew there were superhero comics. I saw some little books with vampires and zombie apocalypses and stuff. And I thought that's all there was. I had no idea. So I started to get really interested in the graphic novels and started reading, hundreds of pounds of graphic novels I was lugging home from the library. And eventually decided that this would be a good way to tell my story about Richard and the abuse, and that I was going to go and learn how to write comics. So I ended up going to Langara College in Vancouver, part-time at that time, in I think 2018, and took writing courses and drawing courses, and was really happy with the instruction. I was completely mesmerized and really fascinated by what they were teaching me. But it really took until my second year at the school for me to kind of build up the courage to approach this topic. I was hesitant, is this something that I want to talk about in front of my classmates? And is this something that's going to be triggering for one of them? So by the second semester, there was a small class I was in, and it was a term project. And my classmates were okay with it. I asked them, and which was great. And so I started to work on the book, and I wasn't really sure how I was going to approach it at the time. But what I decided to do was, we were taught about all kinds of nice materials and pens and all kinds of different techniques. But I found that when I was sitting in front of this beautiful paper, the first thing I think about is, I don't want to wreck this beautiful paper. I don't want to make a mistake. So to get the story out without having to worry about that, I decided just to go on ordinary printer paper with pencil and a regular pen. So I sort of sat down without a plan, and I said, I'm just going to let the story out and see where it goes. So I sort of opened like a little door in my head, and the first thing that came out was, I literally heard the words in my head, and they said, when I think back, what really stands out is the flies. And then I saw in my my head an image of a big fly, not big because it was a giant fly, but because I was really close up to it. And it was kind of sitting on the countertop in my dad's cabin. And I'll show you that drawing here. A quick sketch, and did it quickly over in pen, a brush pen, I think, then erased the pencil, and that's what I ended up with. So I continued to do that for the rest of it. And there's, I don't know if you can see it here. I think I got to be more in the center. I went through for 10 pages, and that was my term project for that class. Now, after that, I didn't really know where I was going to go next with it, so I let it sit for a few months. And then a few months later, I tackled it again. And I thought I would show next is kind of the process that I went through from my sketches to the finished finished product, the finished page. So my pencil sketches, I ended up drawing over the writing in ink so you could read it, because when I scanned it, you couldn't read anything. So here's a sample of one of my pages on the, as you can see, it's quite faint in pencil. And what I did was got a bit of help from one of the instructors who also did editing. And one of his suggestions was to go with bigger panels in some spots. So this is the finished layout, again on printer paper, but this time two pieces taped together. And the I don't know if I'll show the first one again. So in this case, there's a panel, this panel here with the phone ringing right over here is now more prominent. It's bigger and it's over in the corner down here in the bottom. So then what I did was took the light table, and I think I might be able to reach it to turn it on here to show you. This light table here, just a really cheap light table I got off Amazon. And this comes on, and I took my finished sketch. I don't know how this is going to look, but anyway. And then you put the Bristol, you put the paper over it. Oh, you can sort of see it there. And then I'd trace over these lines in light pencil and then go back over it in ink. So then that left me with an inked page, which I inked and then erased with a white eraser. So after that, there's the scanning. So we've got the scanner here, plugs into the computer with a cord. And this is a CanoScan LIDE 400. It cost, I think, 100 or 150 bucks, and it did great. I scanned all of the book with it. So after the scanning, because it's a smaller scanner, I had to scan it in two parts, and then using Clip Studio Paint, kind of stick them back together in the computer. So when I'd done that, then I had to go in and fix mistakes. So for that, I got a Huion Canvas Pro 12 or something tablet. So this plugs in with a bunch of gigantic cords, but the cords don't get in the way of the work. It works fine. And then there's the tablet itself. And it comes with a pen, a batteryless pen. And it was one of the less expensive tablets, but it worked fine. And I didn't try anything fancy with it. I just went in and erased any spots or mistakes, changed a few things, fixed a few errors, tidied up the lettering, and so on. So I guess what I'm trying to say is you don't need super expensive stuff for, if you know, I mean, there's a lot of great stuff out there, but you can, for simpler style like I was using, you can use the less expensive stuff. All this was running on my 9-year-old Acer Aspire laptop with running on Windows 7. I have no idea why it would still run on Windows 7, but it did. So the other thing I did with the tablet is I added things in. I don't know if you can see on this picture, there's no rain. So, and it was a rainy day scene. So what I did was went into the computer and I used the pen to draw the rain in so that I wouldn't mess up my ink, my page over there. So The other thing I thought maybe people would want to know about is how do you do a book? How do you draw detail? How do you remember dialogue? How do you do a book that's now 40 years ago? Obviously, I don't remember everything about that time. So as I was going through the book, there came to spots where I knew I had reference material. And the main reference material that I had was a diary from the time. So I'll just grab that. So this is my diary from 1982. Somehow I managed to keep it all these years. And what I thought I would show you is just one example of how I use dialogue. So Richard, the man who abused me, of course, I'm not very happy with him as a human being and what he did, but I didn't want to portray him falsely in any way. It was important to me just to show what happened, to be like a witness. So anywhere in my diary that I had dialogue written down, I used that so that it was exactly what he said, partly to portray him accurately and partly to show just how ridiculous the things he said were, like when you look back on it. So in this, I'm not sure if you can read it or not, but this block here, I'll read what it says. It says, and this is Richard's quote, "In some countries, this would be perfectly normal," he said, as I destroyed a leaf between my fingers. "I would enjoy you until I died, and you would be very rich then." He turned me around, and I lay on my back, and he looked me straight in the eyes. I couldn't look at him. So this scene took place in a forest, and it was fall, and there were fallen different colored leaves all over the ground. And I remember picking up a red maple leaf, and I was just pulling it apart because I was terrified, actually. So I want to show you that I wanted to stay true to that. So this is it's not showing up very well. There we go. This is the page, and I'll see if I can get around here. And I wrote up here, he leaned in closer and said, "In some countries, this would be perfectly normal. I would enjoy you until I died, and you would be very rich then." He sensed my apprehension, his voice softened. So this part is taken from the page before. But then it says how guilty I felt. I felt terrible, like it was my fault. And then it says, "I picked up some red maple leaves and tore them apart. I could feel my heart banging inside my chest. Then he rolled me onto my back and he leaned over me. And here he is looking at me." So that is what happened. And, you can look at it and go, well, that's just crazy. Why would anybody say that to a child and do that? And I guess my point is this crime is hidden. Nobody ever sees it. And what I wanted to do was to show what happened. And so people could see what you leave your kid alone for 10 minutes with a stranger and they could be doing that. So the other used were photos. So here's an example of some photos. I have a few of them from the time. I just thought I'd bring out a couple of them. This is my horse, and her name's Lady, and she's very prominent in my story. She's just a sweet horse that was a great companion and great adventure. Here's a picture of the cabin. So it's kind of a dark and gloomy place. Log ceiling. You'll see the log ceiling a lot in the pictures. And my dad, this is a good portrayal of my dad, I think, because he was kind of not in a good headspace at a time, probably had some mental illness issues. And this sort of does show what he was like. Then this picture here is this one here. This is me in about 1981 or 1980, when we lived in the farmhouse when we first moved to PEI. So this was a good reference because it shows the two windows. You'll see that in the farmhouse picture. The table you'll see in the farmhouse picture. And then if you see here, there's a yellow jug right there. So that when we moved from the farmhouse to another place that didn't have any heat or running water or plumbing, Dad used that jug to heat up water on a camp stove inside our trailer there, and mix it, the hot and the cold water, and then pour it over my head into the sink so I could wash my hair. So that's just a detail. So here we have him heating up the water here, I think, pouring it into the jug, and then pouring it over my hair into the sink. So anytime at all that I could get any detail from the past that I knew for sure was accurate, I put it in the story. The other thing is, the other resource I had was the internet, of course, which helped a lot. So I'll show an example of that. This page here, this was one of my favorite pages to draw, and the last page of the entire book that I end up finishing. It's let's see if I can get it in the middle of the screen there. It's a snowstorm. I don't know if you can see it. And it was the day before Richard took my virginity. And I came home from school. I walked off the school bus. Let's see if I can show any of this at all. Walked off the school bus, went up to the trailer, did my chores, fed my sheep and my horse, and then I had to go. The weather was getting bad, so Dad didn't have any heat or any amenities at all, nothing in the trailer. So it was getting too cold. I had to go somewhere. So I went down to Richard's house. I had my sleeping bag in this plastic bag, got into his truck. I remember it was a Ford Courier. It was green Ford Courier. And we drove down. So we would have driven through the snow. The snow wouldn't have been plowed by then because it was still falling. So I drew us driving down through the snow and getting out at Richard's place, walking up to his house and knocking on the door. And then my dad wondering how my dad even survived in the trailer by himself. So my point there is, how did I know it was snowing? So let me just grab this. I know it was snowing because that information is on the internet. This is a printout of the weather from December the 9th, 1982. That was the day that I was drawing in there. As you can see, maybe it says over on this side here that it's snowing. You know, it says snow showers, snow, moderate snow, blowing snow. And I highlighted this at the bottom because I'm going to guess the time around after I did my chores would have been about this time. So we have blowing snow. Wind chill is now down to -16. Okay. So then it goes to the weather overnight. And we got to more blowing snow, and now the temperature's gone down to wind chill of -24. So, you know, you can say, well, why did you go over to Richard's? If you hadn't gone over to Richard's, it wouldn't have happened. Well, that is why I went over to Richard's. I could have frozen to death if I hadn't. So I guess this brings me just for one moment, maybe we could just stop for 1 second and think about children living on the street and they're cold and the things that they have to do to get warm. And I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of them involve sexual abuse. My hopes for this book, I guess, first of all, it tells my story. So I feel like I don't have to keep the secret anymore. It's not a secret. I can tell the story. I can show what happened. And that, of course, is very liberating for me. But what I hope is that the book can make a difference. The legal proceedings that I went through didn't turn out the way I wanted. And so you get to the point where basically you can turn an experience like this, the only thing you have left is to try to help other people. I hope that this will allow people to better understand the circumstances that lead up to children being abused, what it's like to actually experience it, how terrifying it is, how easy it is for abusers to get children away, even if it's for a few moments, and start the process. And I'm hoping it can reduce suffering. I'm hoping that somebody who's abused would read this book and recognize parts of it in themselves and go, oh, this has affected my life, and to figure out what they need to do to become whole again, whether it's counseling or writing a book or the some legal avenue or another. And I hope in general we can do better to protect children in society. One reason why I survived all this is I grew up in a community. So even though my parents really weren't there for me at the time, even though I was being abused, even though terrible things happened, there were still people in the community that were a part of my life and that made life bearable. So not to end on too gloomy a note, I thought I would show quickly what I'm working on next, hopefully. So I decided that my scratchy little pencil drawings from the last time were too difficult to work with, and I've started doing these sketchbooks. Oh, hi, Tom. I see a chat there. So I'm doing these sketchbooks, and so in these ones, I'm just doing my, oh, I can't do this here. There we go. I'm doing my drawings in pen. They're like little sketches in pen. I'll use them later to try to figure out the story. And it's just easier to work with. It's a lot more cheerful topic. So I think that is pretty much everything that I was hoping to talk about in this round. I just wanted to say that when I had my little sketches, when I had my little pile of sketches on paper, it was a story that I was kind of working through, but never in a million years did I think that I would find a publisher that would do such a beautiful job, go to the effort to make everything turn out exactly as I hoped for and even better, and to allow me to tell my story. Thank you, thank you, thank you. You have no idea what this means to me. So I also just wanted to say, I think we've come to the time where there's questions, maybe. I'll try to answer them as best as I can. Yeah, so that's the end of my talk. I think I've about 30 minutes or so it should be about right. And I'm just going to look in the chat and see if anybody has questions. I've seen a couple of comments briefly that came up, so thanks for the comments. Just wondering, Julia and Kaya, if you had any questions. Oh, it says, I love how you distinguish Richard's text, more like a murky dribble falling out of him. Yeah, well, it kind of was a murky dribble falling out of him. Yeah, because it was just basically pure evil coming out of him. Oh, someone says, please picture me applauding you. Been trying to get distribution. Oh, and it disappeared. The comments appear and then disappear again. So, and there's only part of it there. Distribution for my something. Well, whatever you're trying to get distribution for, good luck. It's the whole chat isn't showing, so. checking an almanac report. What a good idea to look up to confirm things. Yes. Yes, it was very helpful. I think there was about 10 centimeters of snow, it said, at another site that fell and fell that day. So that really helped me with the drawing. One of my favorite parts of the drawing was to draw images in the snow. It was I really enjoyed the snow pictures. I think snow is really beautiful. So I think the beauty of the falling snow was sort of me almost trying to make an antidote to what I knew was, you know, once I was writing the story, what I knew was coming next. So, what graphic novels are inspiring you right now? Well, I read tons and tons and tons of them. Everywhere I went, in the subway in Vancouver, the libraries everywhere, dragging them all over the place. Right now, I'm reading, the most recent book I read was Calling Dr. Laura. And I really liked that. It was I love animals, so seeing that portrayal of kindness towards animals, I really appreciated that story. And saw some of myself in it too, with someone who's goes to animals for comfort when there's not so much in the way of human beings to go for comfort. No matter how hard it was to make art from it, it really, really is worth to go public. So I hope so. It's not so much for myself, because the story is kind of out for myself, and I feel okay, not great, but I feel okay about the whole thing. I guess what I'm hoping to do is reach other people with a story that they're either going to identify with or will help to educate them as to what it's all about. Are you still doing painting and other forms of art? Not so much the painting. It's sell them at a gallery, and it's just each painting is such a massive project, and this has taken up all my the comics have actually kind of taken over as my form of expression. Poetry, I wrote a bit of poetry. I did some paintings, and for years and years, my art and my writing were separate, and neither one of them was fully expressing what I was hoping to express. So I think I discovered comics after a gigantic gap. It finally allowed me to fully express what I was trying to say, and when I sit down and do the comics, it feels natural, and it feels like I'm really getting down. So the other things like painting and poetry are still there, but definitely the comics are my main form of expression. I think I've been the only one talking in the chat. I'll hush, but thanks again. Well, thanks very much for your questions in the chat and your comments. Please carry on if you like. The other thing I can do if you like is oh, thank you, Emily. Does that mean we're all done? I see something from Drawn and Quarterly there. We can wrap up soon. Okay, so maybe I'll wrap up on a positive note. Why don't I wrap up on a positive note? Because even though this book is difficult to write and difficult to read in some way, that it really is about hope and for making things better. So I just wanted to show you this page. This is just a picture of me riding through the woods. I'll get up so you can see it better. Riding through the woods on my horse, and the sound of the the horse hoofs falling on the hard packed clay road, and the trees with the sunlight coming through them, and the leaves glowing like an emerald green, and how peaceful and wonderful that was. And so not everything in the book and not everything about memories is gloomy. So it was a journey not only into the difficult things in my life, but also a lot of the good things. So do you think that would be a good place to stop for today? Okay, sounds good. Well, I do hope that people I do hope people read my book, and I do hope that they get something positive out of it. Thank you very much for watching.